on the call that would like to make a report?
This is Teresa Malone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I can. Thank you so much. Teresa Malone with the Mississippi Nurses Association. I just want to ask the board, as well as anyone listening, that if you know of a nurse who has passed away due to COVID, to please let the Mississippi Nurses Association know. We are honoring our fallen Mississippi nurse heroes in our upcoming MSRN. We are also posting on our website at msnurses.org. The photos, as well as the resident locations of those nurses that unfortunately have passed away during this time. And we certainly do not want to leave anyone out. So if you know of a nurse that passed away due to COVID, please go to our website. There is a form that you can complete. Send us a photo and some information about that individual, and we will include them. I also want to thank everyone for attending our Coping with COVID 2.0 webinar series that we host with First Responders of Mississippi. We truly appreciate y'all's support. We know that nurses during this time are fatigued, they're under a lot of stress, and we want to do everything we can to provide them those resources. And speaking of COVID, we also know that COVID is impacting a number of our Mississippians, especially those with chronic conditions. And we just opened our CE event. It will be virtual with a focus on chronic illness and how COVID has impacted that. So a lot of things going on right now. And of course, I want to mention House Bill 1303. I know Trey will go into more detail, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, except to say we are absolutely delighted. A special thanks to Representative Donnie Scoggin, all of the nurse practitioners, as well as nurses that have contacted their legislators and helped in moving this bill along. So thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me to provide that short report.
Thank you for that. Are there any other members of the public that would like to make a comment? If not, we'll move on along. Office of Nursing Workforce, Mr. Taylor. We can't hear you.
That probably helped, huh?
Ah, there we go.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just a few updates I'd like to provide from ONW. We have hired 2 new positions this month. The first of which is an administrative assistant 5 position, formerly occupied by Jabria Fogg, and the successful applicant for that was Shannon Whitty, who will begin on formally Tuesday of next week, the 16th. We also, well, that's within MNVP, but we hired a nurse 4 position, which is a new position with the successful applicant was Sharon Russell, and she will begin on Tuesday of next week as well. The ONW 2021 scholarships were distributed to all schools, and all schools this year did participate, and all have received their checks, only one of which hasn't cleared, so I'm still checking on that. And their accountability forms for the distributions are due to us by the 1st of April. We have also updated all of our forms, and we're working with MSI to have them placed on the ONW website, which will greatly, I think, streamline the process next year. And that's an ongoing project. MSI takes a little time to get that done. ONW is currently working on 10 educational projects this spring, the first of which should begin later this month. All projects will be virtual. And they include another ventilation management course, similar to the one we had last spring, some simulation training, provided by MAST at UMC, a CRNA course, another next-gen NCLEX review in conjunction with NCSBN, which is scheduled for April 21st, a post-COVID care course, and a few others. All these courses will be completed by June 30, and all will provide CE where appropriate. We're still awaiting the status of the distance learning telemedicine grant. MVP is currently monitoring 34 nurses in the state. We had to refer 2 participants back to legal due to non-compliance issues in the past couple of months. There are 2 new intakes scheduled for next week. I mentioned the new nurse 4 position, which will greatly enhance our ability to free up some time to do more community education and exposure for the program, and we're looking forward to that. We also have a website that's available. It's under the MBON site at the bottom left of the page, and encourage you to visit that. And also ONW's site is up and active and constantly being modified. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Taylor? Being no questions, have a motion. We accept his report. Motion TJ, second. Second, Dr. King. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Burks, practical nursing education.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to provide you all with a practical nursing education update. The practical nursing program's accreditation schedule has been updated, and site visits under the purview of the board will start in 2024. Concord College, they completed stage 1 for a new program request. They're currently working on stage 2 of the new program application, and once stage 2 is completed, a team will be selected to participate in a site visit for Concord College. The NCSBN annual report, all 15 community college practical nursing programs participated in the NCSBN annual report. The report was recently received and the data is under review. Once all the data is verified, a report will be provided to the board. Also, the program's annual report, which is a part of the accreditation requirement for the fall 2020, the program submitted that program and that report. It is also under review and being analyzed. This information will also be made available to the board upon completion. The last item I have is in regard to a nurse apprenticeship partnership. Since COVID has affected the entire world, a significant demand has been placed on the nursing workforce. And as a result, a demand has been placed on nursing education to create innovative methods for allowing nursing students to fulfill their clinical requirements. Mississippi Healthcare Association, they reached out and they asked for input as to what such a program would look like for the nursing home, personal care, assisted living homes, if those areas would be interested in partnering with the practical nursing programs. As you can see, that was all the report I submitted. Those suggestions are listed on the report to be utilized or possibly utilized as a model for the practical nursing education. The suggestions include benefits of the partnership, who will be eligible in terms of the practical nursing students, the program's responsibility, what activities and procedures the students will not or will be allowed to participate in. And much of the information that is in this draft came from what currently is in effect for the programs out of their dedicated education units, as well as what's submitted in there, the standards for accreditation. So with that information, that is the end of my report.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Burke? Ms. Collins?
What ages does this include as far as the qualification? Ages of the apprenticeship?
Did you hear that, Dr. Burke?
I did not, I'm sorry.
He asked what ages were included for the apprenticeship.
This is for students who are actually currently in the practical nursing program. And to be eligible, those students must have completed the basic fundamental courses, and they have to be in good academic standing in the program that they're currently enrolled. So it's actually for students who are currently in the practical nursing programs in the state of Mississippi.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Burke. At this time, would like to have a motion that we accept and approve the report and the draft for the apprenticeship. Have a motion, TJ? Second? Second from Ms. Jackson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I failed to, one thing back up here under ONW, Ms. Sandra Culpepper had a report.
I just wanted to bring before the board today that through ONW, we have 5 vacancies on the advisory committee for the ONW. And so at this time, we have been accepting nominations, and we have received 4 out of 5. And we will be meeting in March, early March. So we wanted to go ahead and bring these 4 before the board for a vote. The following people be approved to participate on the ONW Advisory Committee, and that would be Edith Lou Jones, Suzanne Wilson, Dr. Ruby Denson, and Dr. Tina Majors. And these 4 people come from all different areas of nursing because, as Greg and I have talked, we want a very diverse group so that we touch all areas of nursing through ONW. And by bringing them on board, we're going to be able to accomplish that.
Anybody? Yes.
Are they across the state as well? Do they
Yes.
represent all sections?
Yes, we have reached out to every area as well as the different areas of nursing.
For those on the call, if you did not hear that, the question was, are they representative of all areas of the state? And the response was yes. Any other questions for Ms. Culpepper?
I mean, I have somebody I would like to nominate from our part of the state who has been instrumental in LPN education. And I think would be excellent on that committee if you're taking any nominations now.
Yes, Greg has been receiving them. And Greg,
Was that Dr. Stanford?
it is.
Yes, ma'am. We'll send you the nomination form.
Be perfect.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Culpepper? If not, then on recommendation from the committee, all in favor of accepting these members onto the ONW Advisory Board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Well, we figured we found that out earlier. Board business, business Zoom meetings, minutes from December 11th, 2020. Have a motion that we accept those minutes into the record. A motion, TJ, second. Second, Dr. Stanford, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Agree settlement proposal minutes from December 2020. Have a motion, we accept those in the record.
Motion.
Motion, Dr. Stanford, second. TJ, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Waive reading of names on motions. Have a motion, Dr. King, second, TJ, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Future meetings, we have agreed settlement proposals, April 13th, disciplinary hearings, April 14th, 15th, in the business meeting, April 16th, 11:05. The panel of Dr. Stewart, Laura Moore, Sandra Culpepper, Shirley Jackson. With that said, we move on to legislation. Trey. If you're talking, we can't hear you. If you're not talking, we still can't hear you.
I got it.
There you are. All right.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
You're good.
The legislature finished a major deadline last night for floor action, we call it, where they go from the committee process to debating bills on the floor. The Senate actually adjourned around 1:45 a.m. last night, which was kind of crazy, but they were dealing with this medical marijuana cannabis bill. trying to forward something that they could pass. They put a lot of effort into that. So now we will move to bills that originated, whether it's the House or Senate. Now they're going to be transmitted, the ones that are still alive, over to the other chamber to be taken up by committee, possibly debated, and then move on to the floor if they get the votes to pass out of committee. I just wanted, we've been doing a bill tracking chart this year, and I want to thank Shan for helping and assisting with that. We've been monitoring and on a chart system, but we started out with several dozen bills we were monitoring. I think, Shan, we got down to 21 yesterday, and after last night, we lost some more. So the list is narrowing, which is a good thing in most cases. I'll just mention real quickly, House Bill 1205 deals with telemedicine, the definition of telemedicine. It's just a tweaking. If you look at that bill, the definitions on line 33 through 37. If somebody wants to look at it, that's House Bill 1205. It has passed the House, and it will be going to the Senate. The amendment does appear to be technical in nature, or just kind of making sure it's encompassing various forms of technologies. The other bill that Teresa mentioned earlier that I think everybody's pleased about, one, for the nursing profession, but also for the citizens of the state and access to health care and with our APRNs, is House Bill 1303. Thanks to all the association, MNA, MANP, every LPNs, CRNAs, the whole team has worked hard to get us here. I think everybody knows when the bill passed out of committee for the first time in the House Public Health Committee. It passed the House floor 78 to 38, with 6 absent or not voting, and that was a pretty good margin. Now the bill now is being transmitted to the Senate. There's still a lot of work left to do. There's been a lot of progress made, but there's a lot left to do. So, we'll continue working on that. And there again, trying to provide, patients and the citizens of the state an opportunity for professional health care. So we're going to keep working hard. Next bill I wanted to mention is House Bill 1327, 1327. It may be okay. I discussed this with Phyllis, and I want to say I sometimes I wear Phyllis's phone out, Shan's too, but we discussed this. It may be okay. There's just some language in there in emergencies, which we understand that, about reciprocation of licenses from out of state, nurse pracs, physicians, other healthcare nurses, and we just want to be sure that that it's within reason, and it may be, but it's just one we're tracking. Senate Bill 2119 died last night. It's what we call ban the box, and I know the Board of Nursing as well as other agencies support people having a second chance or opportunity if they've had a criminal conviction to get a job. I mean, I think everybody supports the concept, but you also don't want to, take away some discretion from the agency. But that bill died, and there was another one, Senate Bill 2187, called the Universal Recognition of Occupational Licenses. It died last night. There was, I think, some different agencies that had some concerns about that one, particularly when you're in a compact like Mississippi Board of Nursing, with very high standards and multi-state, obviously. So the other real quick, 2750 deals with pharmacists, authorize certain tests, but really the way it was explained by Senator Harkins on the floor, it just helps modify the protocol between physicians and pharmacists He used an example like if you go to your drugstore and there's 5 statin drugs that you could use. One's a generic, but you got written a prescription for a non-generic. They don't have to call the doctor back. They can make the pharmacist can recommend the change. So it's not a scope of practice per se. It's more to do with the protocols. Last couple of bills I'll mention. One is the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act, Senate Bill 2765. It did pass. It's still alive. It will be sent to the Mississippi House of Representatives. Interesting note for the folks on the board and on the call, unlike Initiative 65, which you all know passed on the ballot last November, this bill, that bill just allowed physicians to issue certificates of for a certain quantity or ounces of the product. This bill would actually include nurse practitioners as one of the groups that could actually dispense, I won't say prescribe, dispense the drug. So that's kind of interesting from our standpoint. And it's got, anybody has questions later, they can call me. I know most of the details of the bill. Lastly, I'll just mention the Fresh Start Act of 2019. That's Senate Bill 2792. That bill is there again. It's got, I think, a good intent, good purpose behind it. We're monitoring it. There again, it just puts some procedures and requires some more steps that our administrative staff would have to go through in the hiring process, particularly with folks that maybe had previous criminal convictions. So, like I said, we're going to watch that, and obviously we'll work with whatever the legislature passes, but that is something we'll continue to watch. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trey. Does anybody have any questions of Trey about the legislation? Yes. John.
You say that would be the something that you know yet, the 2 bills, no, never mind.
Okay. All right.
Well, the bills that relate to the nurse practitioner,
Is
that you sent from the House to the Senate.
you're trying about what the calendar would look like? Ms. Collins has asked if there was any anticipated time frame as far as Senate calendar on when these bills may be taken up in committee.
That's an excellent question. I didn't want to bore y'all with too much procedure, but it's a great question. Tuesday, March the 2nd is the next, that's the deadline for, in other words, a House bill that goes over to the Senate, say House Bill 1303, the full practice authority, it has to be voted out or brought out of committee by the end of the day, or that's a deadline day, March the 2nd, Tuesday.
Yeah. Thank you.
That would be our next big one.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Trey. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Next, we have the executive director report. Dr. John.
Good morning, members of the board and our public participants as well. My report will be short this morning. I did want to bring to your attention, board members and members of the that are out in the public, of our mid-year meeting. NCSBN mid-year meeting will be conducted March 9th through the 11th. And I have sent out the link to the board members. It is free to members. If you wish to attend, please make sure you have registered for that. Additionally, the NCSBN Scientific Symposium is scheduled for March the 22nd. And the APRN Roundtable that's sponsored by NCSBN will be conducted on April 6th. Those links, registration is open for all of those individual events. And I have posted the links for you all, sent them out via email. If you have not received the link, please let me know and I'll resend. All of the NCSBN events are scheduled to be virtual for the remainder of 2021. The mid-year conference is going to take place on half days, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. Those will be half days, and I think it starts afternoon. That's to allow those members that reside in the far western state the opportunity to participate as well. So make sure you pay attention to the agenda if you're interested in attending. It will be 4 hours each day, and that should be better for everybody to participate. The only other thing that I would like to bring to your attention is, well, a couple of things. We will be closed on Monday in the service of President's Day. And we will reopen for normal business on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. In addition, we have been working with the State Health Department and the ESF 8 agency by participating on the Pandemic Steering Committee for Mississippi. And what they have asked us to partner with them in is, recruiting nurses for the vaccine rollout. And so we were able to, in utilizing our resources and working with the State Department of Health and ESF 8, to send out requests for nurses who wanted to participate or help with the rollout of the vaccine. We have not yet entered into all that we need to do to roll out the vaccine. So with that being said, we had about approximately 5,000 nurses responded to that request. Our position or our purpose was to make sure that they were vetted and that they indeed were licensed nurses and they had an unencumbered license. Some of these positions will be paid positions and some will be volunteer positions. That is all being handled through the State Department of Health. So that information has been forwarded to them and they will make the decision as to who is assigned to what area and whether they will be paid or volunteer. So they're working out all of that. But I just want the board to be aware of our participation with the Pandemic Steering Committee. And I think that's all I have at this point, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Anybody have any questions? If not, have a motion that we accept Dr. Johnson's Executive Director report. Have a motion, Ms. Jan, second, Ms. Jackson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. So the budget report will be broken down into 4 categories. I'll start with expenditures. Expenditures within the travel and supply line item continue to be below normal, of course, due to COVID travel restrictions. And bulk supply orders are generally made at the end of the year. Other line items expenses are within normal spending limits for this point of the year. Revenue is greater than what was collected by the end of January during the last renewal cycle. The current revenue exceeded the previous amount by $295,453.72. This increase in revenue can be ascribed to the increase of renewal fees. Cash, there's currently over $7 million in available cash. This cash is sufficient to meet all operational needs for the next renewal cycle. Fiscal year 22 budget request. The agency presented their budget to both House and the Senate Appropriation Committees, and we are currently awaiting those results. You should have your packets. If there are any questions, comments, I'll take them now.
Do I have any questions about the budget? If not, have a motion, we accept the budget report. Motion, Dr. King, second. Laura Moore, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. As far as committee reports, the executive committee has nothing coming out today. Compliance committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Compliance Committee has 3 motions coming out to the board today. I move that the board adopt the Compliance Committee's recommendation that the following affidavits, formal reprimands be accepted for ratification. License number R914993. I move that the board adopt the Compliance Committee's recommendation to approve the second request of license number R-874237 for an extension on the preconditions of the final order requirements for an additional 6 months. I move that the board adopt the compliance committee's recommendation to approve provider's treatment regimen to include the following medication for license number R880149, Strattera, 40 milligrams.
Any question? Any members about that? It's running early when it comes to committee. It's not required to have a second, so that's why we skipped early. But with that said, with the motion coming from the committee, all those in favor of accepting this recommendation?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Advanced practice.
Thank you. And advanced practice has nothing to report.
All right. And practice committee.
I'm standing because I want to give Edward his copy. Mr. Chairman, I have, and I'm delighted, I'm very excited. I know maybe that's not professional, I don't know, but I'm super excited. To present to the committee, to the board rather, a recommendation coming from the practice committee. I believe you all have a copy. I'll read that motion. I move that the board adopt practice committee's recommendation to approve the Mississippi Board of Nursing scope of practice decision-making model for APRN, RN, LPN considerations as a tool to assist in making sound judgment when determining whether a nurse activity, task, procedure, role, or intervention can be safely performed. And if I may add, Dr. Burks has led a very diligent, hardworking group that has represented both the board staff, board members, different areas of practice to come to develop the document that you have before you. And Dr. Burks, did you want to make a comment or anything about this before the board?
Yes, I'll make a comment. The actual model, we utilized NCSBN's model for decision-making to create this, this document. So the NBSN decision-making model, it has been utilized by boards before. That was again created in 2015. And that was the purpose from which we created the model that you have before you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Dr. Stewart, Dr. Burke? Just for clarification, this is a guideline document. It's not going to be part of the administrative code, but it will help answer questions as people about, can I do this or can I do that? Please reference the decision tree model that will be placed on the website. Any estimated time frame on that? Wow. I was just told that if it's approved today, it'll be on the website today. So Shannon's on the hot seat. With that said, and there are no other comments, with the motion coming from the committee, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all we have.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Burke, for a long overdue. Thank you for your hard work and time you put into getting this together. Mr. Wood. Just clarification for a procedural thing. At this point, with no other business, we will recess until the full board panel review at 12:30. Have a motion to recess. Motion, Teresa, second. Dr. King, all in favor? All right, we stand at recess.
Yeah, I made this.
Yeah.
Cheyenne, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Douglas? Can you hear me? Doug? Make sure your mic is unmuted and let us know if you can hear us.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now. Hey. Can you hear me, Doug?
Yes.
How are you today?
Oh, I'm well. I wish it wasn't so cold.
There we go. Now we can hear you well. That's much better. Yeah, I think we're supposed to get some ice and bad weather coming. And just FYI, I believe we are up and recording. So don't say anything you don't want your Ole Miss friends to hear.
Are you trying to make somebody biased against me?
You know, I think I'm truly the loner here. There's not too many Southern Miss folks around the board.
Anyway.
Ready to go?
Yeah, we are ready. Mr. Sears is going to let you know we recessed and there was one point of board business we needed to do real quick, and then we'll move into the other part.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Let it be known that we do have Dr. Owens and Ms. Jan Collins participating virtually. I turn to Dr. Stewart for point of order.
Thank you. I apologize. I neglected to bring a second motion from the practice committee to the board, so I'd like to present that now. I move that the board adopt the practice committee's recommendation as follows. It is within the scope of practice of the registered nurse to perform intrauterine insemination IUI procedures, provided that the following conditions are met. 1, the nurse is educated and competent in the procedure. This education and competence are documented initially and on an ongoing basis. 2, there is a medical order for the procedure. 3, the nurse practices according to generally accepted standards. Number 4, all necessary resources are available. 5, the patient's status does not contraindicate the procedure. And 6, the agency facility has policies and procedures addressing all aspects of this issue.
Does anybody have any questions concerning that?
This is Michelle Owens. I just want to hear the beginning. Is that to say that a registered nurse, is that what you said, performing IUI?
Yes, that's correct.
And the decision tool was used to come to this?
No, the practice committee reviewed the literature, the scientific literature, as well as national standards and other statements and positions by as many boards of nursing that have this published, and took a couple of months actually to review that before we came to this decision. The evidence is very clear that patient outcomes are unchanged based on the provider who actually does the insemination. Did that answer your question?
I guess so. What you're saying is just injection of sperm into the vagina. Is that what you're talking about? Or
That's all
into
we're
the
talking about.
into the uterus. So this is just sperm.
Correct. Yes, correct.
All right. Any other questions? not, I ask that we vote on the motion for the committee. All in favor of approving? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. With that said, we'll move on to the full board appeal of case number 014073. And I would like to turn it over to Mr. Edward Wiggins in the AG's office this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Edward Wiggins. I will be serving as the hearing officer for today. Thank you. Before the board this afternoon is an appeal to the full board by licensee P323421 issued to Robert Joseph Vicknair. Is Mr. Vicknair present?
He is not.
Does counsel for Mr. Vicknair present?
Yes, my name is Doug Mercier. I am counsel for Robert Vicknair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mercier. Right, before we get started, just a few, I guess some ground things we want to get out clear before we get started. This is actually an appeal before the full board panel. These appeals shall be limited to the record from the hearing. The full membership of the board shall not retry the appeal case. Arguments in this matter are directed solely to issues from the record of the transcript that results in the appeal decision and shall not include new evidence, testimony, or witnesses. Please note that the respondent and appellee shall be allotted 20 minutes to present their arguments while the decision of the board hearing panel should be overturned or affirmed. The respondent appellant may reserve a portion of his or her allotted time for rebuttal. Please note the parties will not be permitted to read at length from their briefs or records. The full membership of the board may, in its discretion, advise the parties of points upon which it desires to hear argument. Members of the full membership of the board participating in the appeal hearing may ask questions of either party related to issues identified in the appeal. Board members who participated in the board hearing panel shall recuse themselves from participation in the appeal hearing. It's my understanding that those members that served on the board panel at that time have already recused themselves and are not present. At this time, I will ask the board membership that is present to identify themselves, beginning with the board members that are actually on via Zoom.
This is Michelle Owens.
This is Jan Collins, consumer member.
Thank you.
Mary Stewart.
Teresa Stanford.
Sandra Culpepper.
Alton Shaw.
Or more. Shirley Jackson.
Please note that there is a quorum present. This matter is open to the public. Council, are there any preliminary matters we need to dispense with?
No preliminary matters other than the exhibits have been provided today for the board hearing panel. That's exhibits A through G, which would consist of the brief of the appellant, the brief of the appellee, the complaint dated November 6, 2019, the final order of the board dated January 30th, 2020, the transcript, the exhibits from the hearing, the notice of full board appeal, and finally, the procedures that will govern this matter.
Mr. Mercier, do you have any objection to any of these exhibits?
No objections.
Thank you, sir. Since we will be dealing with a time limit for each of you council, Mr. Chairman will be keeping track of the time. I'll ask that he raise his right hand when there are 10 minutes remaining, as well as when there are 5 minutes remaining. And again, when there are 2 minutes remaining. Mr. Mercier, since this is the appeal on behalf of your client, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board. This is a little unusual for me doing this by Zoom. I much prefer to be there in person, but I understand the circumstances and the situation. Today, I'm before you as the attorney for Robert Vicknair to present his appeal. Robert Vicknair's due process rights were not preserved by the hearing panel in its decision of January 30th, 2020. As a consequence, Robert has appealed the final order. Let me start by saying that the hearing in December of 2019 that resulted in the January 30, 2020 final order went forward after two preliminary matters were determined by the panel, the board panel. The first was that notice had been properly given to Robert Vicknair. And the second was that he should not be granted a continuance that he had requested in writing. The first one, which is the due process matter, is the most important one. And before a hearing should proceed, the due process rights of the licensee are required to be protected. It is a sacred matter. You've heard it before, I know, but this is based upon the transcript. I wasn't present, but based upon the transcript, the due process rights were not protected. But this is what Mississippi law says about due process. The constitutions of the United States and Mississippi require that no person may be deprived of his property except by due process of law. That's citing United States Constitution, Amendment Section 14, Section 1, and Mississippi Constitution, Article 3, Section 14. It continues, and an administrative body must protect such rights before depriving a person of his property. Such rights include the right to present evidence at a hearing. That's from Mississippi Telephone Corporation versus Mississippi Public Service Commission. It's a Mississippi case. The board, I'm sure, has heard before and understands and knows that a license is a valuable property right of a licensee. So before any deprivation of that license, due process has to be afforded the licensee. That requires notice and an opportunity to be heard. The notice comes in the form of service of a complaint and notice of the hearing, which is called process. The other is the right to be heard. I won't belabor the point on the continuance right now, but Robert Vicknair specifically wrote the board and asked for a continuance so he could be present and be heard. But on the due process side, he was required to receive notice, process, service of the complaint, and a notice of the hearing. Here, the evidence doesn't support that. In an administrative hearing, the standard of proof is the clear and convincing evidence standard. That's not just for the evidence against the licensee that he's violated a provision of the statutes or the regulations. The clear and convincing evidence standard also applies to whether or not he has received the proper notice to attend the hearing. Here, what you have is the standard of proof requirement, which is cited by or stated in Mississippi State Board of Nursing versus Wilson, I believe, which was also quoted by Mr. Mutzeiger. That standard is cited as this: standard of proof required for decision of the State Board of Nursing in cases involving fraud or conduct deemed quasi-criminal in nature is clear and convincing evidence. So in order to determine whether or not Robert Vicknair actually received what's required by statute we view it under the clear and convincing standard. It's not a guess. We don't make presumptions or assumptions because due process is so important. In this case, Robert was not properly served with a copy of the complaint and a notice of the hearing, which constitutes the process that's required by statute, and it had to be served in compliance with the provisions of that statute. That's Mississippi Code Annotated 73-1531-1. And that's a requirement to preserve the due process rights of the licensee. And it's up to the board and the board panels to protect that due process right. According to the statute that says how process is to be served and the requirements for that, Section 73-1531-1 states as follows. Upon receiving the sworn affidavit charging a licensee with an act which is a ground for disciplinary action under this article, the executive director or designee of the board shall fix a time and place for a hearing and shall cause a copy of the specific allegations and charges to be sent by certified mail or served by personal service of process, together with notice of the time and place fixed for the hearing, to be served upon the accused at least 15 days prior thereto. The accused may waive notice of the hearing in writing, and the board may grant the accused at least one extension of time upon the request of the accused. Looking at the requirements there, if we take them one at a time, there was no personal service of process, so that's not at issue here. What's at issue is the certified mail and also the extension of time requested by the accused. Now, let me take that one first. It says the board may grant the accused at least one extension of time upon the request of the accused. That's in the permissive and not the mandatory. So the board certainly can decide to grant or to deny a request for a continuance. In this case, the board decided they didn't want to do it. But the next question is whether or not that's arbitrary and capricious, and I'll get to that point in a moment. Well, then go to the certified mail issue. Going back to the statute, it says a time and place for a hearing shall be fixed, which was done. And then it says that the board shall cause a copy of the specific allegations and charges to be sent by certified mail. When you look at the evidence that was before the board panel, there was no clear and convincing evidence that Robert Vignair had been served in accordance with the statute by certified mail. If you look at the exhibits B5 and B7, you compare the signatures. There's two signatures there. Exhibit B7 is a signature, contains a signature of Robert Vignair on the MAP agreement that he signed. And then you compare it with the signature on the certified mail receipt, which is B5. Those two don't look anything similar to each other. One is a sworn affidavit with a signature. That's B7. Since it's sworn, and I believe it's notarized by somebody there at the board, Stephanie Morris, we have reason to believe that's an authentic signature, B7. But when you look at B5, that signature bears no resemblance to B7. That information and evidence right there defies any attempt to say that there was clear and convincing evidence before the board that he had been served, Robert Vignair had been served in conformity with the statute.
Pardon my interruption. I would like to object for the record, Mr. Wiggins, that the MAP agreement was not introduced at the actual proceeding and therefore should be considered outside the bounds of consideration by this board hearing panel, as we are, as you have defined, strictly confined to the record as presented to the board hearing panel.
Thank you, Mr. Mussager. Your response, Mr. Mercier?
Yes, I wasn't at the hearing. I requested as I'm supposed to, a copy of the transcript and the exhibits from the hearing, and that's what I was sent. I was sent these exhibits. The map agreement is attached to another exhibit for the board. Let me see if I can find the number. The map agreement is attached to B7 in my copies.
B7.
Right, in what I have before me.
The state would respond that Exhibit B7 has been provided by the appellant in this matter. A review of the exhibits attached that have been provided both to Mr. Mercier as well as to the hearing panel contains no Exhibit B7 relating to the map affidavit. Instead, Exhibit B7, as identified in those exhibits, reads compliance summary.
Okay, gentlemen, what I have before me is Exhibit B7 is a final order. Case number 2018-0972.
And if you'll look behind it, there's the map agreement.
Mississippi Alternative Program Agreement.
Yes, sir.
I do see what has been marked Exhibit B7. This is an exhibit as submitted along with the brief by the appellant. The exhibits that have been reduced to transcript as an official record of the proceeding. December 4th, 2019 contains an Exhibit B7 that is in fact not a map order, but a compliance. I would ask if the panel examine the records. Is it not found within the records? I'm not certain if there is an improper submission of records, but the records that I have before me that have been prepared contain, as I have stated, an Exhibit B7 compliance summary. So at this time, I would submit that I could provide to the board these records. However, it's concerning if it's not been provided to the board panel already. If I may ask, Mr. Mercier, are you in receipt of an Exhibit B7 marked compliance summary?
Compliance summary?
That's correct. appears as such.
I don't see it. I've got mount compliance activity summary, which is B6, right here.
Permission to pause the proceedings, Mr. Wiggins, so a determination can be made that the correct records are in fact in place for the proceeding.
I think that would be advisable, Mr. Newsiger.
My sincere apology if there's in fact an error, and I intend not to waste this panel or even Mr. Musier's time.
Well, I would like to submit one more thing for the record. I was not present at the original hearing, and neither was Mr. Vicknair. So the only way I could have received these documents were through requesting the transcript on appeal and the exhibits, and that's what was sent to me.
Okay, let's take a moment to see if we can't get these exhibits straight, gentlemen.
It's not right. Forgive me.
Is the hearing officer Mr. Griffin?
Wiggins, Mr. Mercier.
Mr. Wiggins, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear earlier. Mr. Wiggins, can you tell me approximately how much time I have left in my argument?
So far, when the objection began, I paused it. You've only used 9 minutes of your time.
I'm sorry, how many?
9 minutes.
9, okay.
Yeah, I paused it when the objection started.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mercier.
Yes.
Okay, it appears as though we have two distinct B7s. There is a B7 that I see as a part of the brief, your brief, that includes a final order. But there is also a B7 as a part of Mr. Mootsiger's brief that also includes the B7 and is a compliance summary as he indicated.
And just to clarify, Mr. Wiggins, the second B7 that you reference is actually not made as part of the submission of the state's brief, but rather is the state submission of the official transcript, record of transcript, and exhibits for the December 4th, 2019 hearing.
Before we go further, Dr. Owens is saying she's not here. So give us just a moment on the technical.
Okay.
We can hear now. Sorry. It's
No problem.
we're back. Yeah, we're good.
All right.
I can hear you. And I've heard Mr. Wiggins, Mercier, and Wesley.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Mr. Mootsiger, you were saying your B7 is?
B7 is the state submission as the official record of transcript and exhibits for the December 4th, 2019 proceeding.
So Mr. Mercier, the B7 that you reference in your submission, is that where are we to understand that you received that?
I received it from the court reporter or from the board, one of the two.
And that document is what?
I'm sorry?
Your B7 document is what?
The same one that you looked at. It says final order, and then behind it is the Mississippi Alternative Program Agreement, the MAP agreement.
Okay. Do you have as a,
This is what I received right here. That's what I received. And back here, just like you, there is B7 right there. And behind it is the MAP agreement.
okay, do you have a B7 that is a compliance summary?
Not a B7, no. That's the only B7 that I have, is the one that you and I are talking about. There is a compliance activity summary that is B6, which is right here. Is that the same B6 or same summary you're talking about, Wesley? Can you see it?
You take a look. Doug, you received the email with all the exhibits for today's proceeding. Is that right?
I don't remember if I got this from the court reporter when I got the transcript or got it from the board. I mean, it's been a long time. I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Right. I'm talking about more recently where I provided you an email of all the exhibits for today.
No, I don't know.
Mind making that determination?
What do you want me to look for?
I believe it may help provide some clarity into the matter.
All right,
The compliance summary exhibit B7, to which I'm referencing, is in fact a compliance summary with the dated first entry of August 5th, 2019, 1:30 p.m. C. Blackwell and B. Rucker. It's in the middle of the document.
The compliance summary I have begins February 25th, 2019 and goes through July 3rd, 2019.
And do you have exhibits A through G presently available, Mr. Mercier?
A through G?
Yes, as we discussed at the beginning of the proceeding.
What are A through G? Oh, okay, those I didn't have any objection to. I didn't pay any attention. I just didn't have any objection.
Okay, well, you've been provided those exhibits via email. And in those exhibits is letter E, the transcript exhibits, motion hearing held December 4, 2019.
Well, that's not what I received when I requested the documents and the transcript for the appeal. And that's not what I received. If it's different, I mean, I don't know. How else would I receive these documents if I wasn't at the hearing? Wesley, what were the exhibits that in A through G, when you get to the exhibits for the panel hearing, what exhibits does it say? What number through what number?
B1 through B11.
Yeah, I'm looking at the transcript right here. And that's what it says on the transcript too. It says B1 through B11 was entered into evidence or admitted into evidence. But what I have shows B1 through B9. See right here? This is B1 through B9. That's what I was sent. But I will tell you now that we're talking, I'm looking at the transcript and it says that Brett submitted exhibits B1 through B11 to be admitted into evidence.
Mr. Mercier, do you have access now to exhibit E that was provided to you via email? That you were just determining that?
Well, tell me what E is.
The transcript exhibits. Mr. Mercier, I sent you a compilation email containing all exhibits A through G.
Well, Wesley, the only thing that I was concerned about was having my exhibits that I submitted and what you had with your brief, because I'm bound by that. Any other exhibits, I really didn't care about because we're bound by what was at the hearing.
Correct. And so, Mr. Mercier, I think we're going to have to make a determination of whether we can proceed at this point. Perhaps you need to make a review of Exhibit E and determine whether or not you're willing. And in fact, actually, I'm going to defer to Mr. Wiggins to make that determination of the best course of action, given that I'm hearing from you, or I have not heard from you confirmation that you are operating off of exhibits B1 through B11 as the state is.
All I can say is, as an attorney who filed an appeal, I followed the rules and I requested a transcript and I requested the exhibits. I got a copy of the transcript and I got these exhibits B1 through B9. That's what I requested and that's what I built the appeal around. If you submitted something later that are the A through G that you're referring to, or whatever it is, I don't know, but this is what I was sent.
Gentlemen, why don't we do this? Since it seems that we do have some discrepancy on who has what, I think it might be good for us to take some time to clear up what documents are a part of the record. It may even be worth looking at your calendars to see when we may possibly be able to reschedule this. As unfortunately, I don't want this board panel to have to, I guess, sit through trying to determine which document is which, and then have to go through with the hearing. Could we possibly recess for about 10 minutes? You gentlemen maybe take a look at your calendars and see maybe when we can get this reset.
All right. I would like to, if you're going to consider resetting it, Mr. Wiggins, in that event, I would like to make a motion to at least allow me to resubmit a brief based on the proper documents if I don't have them.
Well, I think that's reasonable, Mr. Mercier. So let's take a recess, take a look at our calendars, and then we can deal with the documents.
All right.
So let's plan to be back 1:25.
Are we meeting?
Hey, Wesley,
Yes,
you said for us to look at our calendars.
yes.
What's the availability?
I have to talk to my board, Doug, to determine their availability. And, you know, I'll make every best effort I have to accommodate theirs. Let me discuss that with my board, Doug, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. Hey, Wesley,
Yes,
can you call me on my cell phone real quick?
I can.
All right, we're back on the record. In light of the situation and of the recommendation of our Attorney General representative, we will adjourn and allow the attorneys time to sort out all the information and get some dates together, and then we'll reconvene. So at this time, I ask a motion, we adjourn. Motion, Dr. Stewart, second, Ms. Culpepper, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay, so we're adjourned for today.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, when will we get a new date?
The attorneys are gonna get together and sort out when they're available. And hopefully they might be able to give us a couple of days to make sure we can all get something going.
Well, will it need to be our exact group that was on today?
For the most part, yes. We have
Okay,
one more,
thank you.
and we have one more than we needed.
Oh, really?
We lost it. Maybe I should have said that.
Well, while we have been here, I just had my second shot with a nurse practitioner named Pendergrass who practices in Flowood.
Oh.
I'm waiting my 15 minutes.
If you start growing a third arm, let somebody know.
Take some more leave, Jan.
What now?
Take some more leave.
Yeah, I've got it sitting right here. I'm fixing to take it now. Y'all have a good weekend. Be safe.
All right.
Bye, Dr. Owens. Bye, Blake. Bye, Priscilla.
All right.